This was not the plan, but it just went straight into streaming. So we're streaming. Okay, this was not the plan. Um, Hold on one second. Live now. As you can see, there's some merchandise that is being sold. Customized Ben Affleck, BVS, Batman, and Zack Snyder Justice League Batman headpieces. But not just a headpiece. It's not just a headpiece. It's actually a headpiece for an action figure. And so that's on sale. You can check it out on Twitter. Guys are customizing heads. Of course, Darkseid is selling, and we see different fans collecting pieces of the Darkseid figure. So the Darkseid figure by McFarlane is being sold, and we see that. Of course, we have the two statues, the bust and the full-fledged statue from Queen Studios and from Prime Studios. We talked about that. Restore the SnyderVerse makes all the sense in the world, but I got a little update for you guys. So Matt Reeves, he spoke a little bit. White Black Disciple says, shut your goofy up. White Black Disciple saying ain't nobody want to hear that. Okay. Yeah, you can whatever you want to do. I don't know. If you want to be negative, you can be negative on here. Smash that like button when you up in here. All right, smash that like button. Yeah, Matt Reeves on Ben Affleck's version of Batman. So Matt Reeves actually saw the script that Ben Affleck wrote on his version of Batman. And he said the movie was originally going to be directed by Ben Affleck, and the script they sent me had been written by Ben. And when I read it, I was like, oh, I get it. It was a standalone Batman film that was centered around Ben's version of the character, and it was more action-driven than what I felt I could do. I did not connect to the movie in terms of me as a filmmaker. It was very James Bondian. It was filled with lots of set pieces. It could have been a very exciting movie for someone else to do, but it wasn't for me to do. So it was really cool to hear, Matt Reeves talk about that. And you guys can check out more. I think Matt Reeves is being interviewed on Ben Affleck's Batman and really loved it. Before I go into some more stuff, I also want to talk a little bit about Restore the SnyderVerse, where we're at. Of course, I was listening to Sil Abdul. He was talking about how DC possibly could be sold off and how possible Snyder fans can buy stock into DC and stuff like that. And he was saying, if the Snyder fandom was more coordinated, it's not as coordinated now. That's not true. The Snyder fandom is very coordinated. The problem with the Snyder fandom is not that we're not coordinated. It's just that some people are now busy, occupied with other things. But if a call to action happens, you'll see all of us come on board. It's just that we're busy, occupied with other things. Like we're talking about Free Palestine right now. Released the Snyder Cut. Lord Koj, shout out to Lord Koj in the building. And a number of members, we're pretty vocal about it. I'm more of a strategic sort of person, so I will be talking to you guys on strategic things that you can do. I already put it up on Twitter, but now I'm going to come on here and I'm going to talk about it a little bit. But we're just occupied with other things. But that doesn't mean, because I'll be honest with you, that the major reason why we are preoccupied with other things is because at present we have zero interest in DC. And until we can move the needle and do actual something effectual, we're kind of waiting it out at this point in time to wait for DC to self-destruct, waiting for Warner Brothers to self-destruct. We have already done our job. We already know the interest in DC is at an all-time low because we're not there. We're the ones that drive the interest. We're the ones that drive the excitement. So, it is what it is. Smash the like button. Those of you coming in here, don't forget to smash the like button. Christ I Am Disciple always give y'all something that, you never heard from other channels. So we keeping it moving. RJ Jenkins says, "What's up, brother? Wait a minute, where am I? Am I in Christ I am disciple, or am I RJ Jenkins? Am I in what you need? Am I being what you need right now? Or am I in Christ I am disciple?" Oh my God, I think I'm streaming this on the wrong channel. Well, it is what it is. We already started off. What's up, my brother? Well, RJ Jenkins obviously is a boxing fan, so I must be on my boxing channel doing my film channel stuff right now. So for those of you who are here, I'm not talking boxing today. If this channel is my boxing channel, I'm not talking boxing today. So I apologize immediately for that. I actually have a film channel that I talk film and I talk about entertainment and I talk about campaigns that we have. So I may have mixed it up and I might be putting what is on my film channel right now, the content on it, on my boxing channel. But we will talk about it anyway because we get into it. I'm going to stay on topic. I'm not going to talk no boxing. So if you guys are looking for boxing and y'all want to talk about boxing, I'm not really talking about it right now, right? I'm talking about something else. But it's all good. I mean, you know, it is what it is. All right. So today y'all going to hear something else from me. And you're going to hear probably another dimension of me if you're not a fan of my other channel. So hang on, stay tuned. You're going to enjoy this. So we're talking about Restore the SnyderVerse, which is a campaign movement that has been, it came off of Release the Snyder Cut. We were very successful at releasing the Snyder Cut of Zack Snyder's Justice League after demanding that it come to be. And Warner Brothers, the studio, has not been listening to our mandate. We had a universal mandate on 2021 where we tweeted out 1.5 million tweets, the highest ever in Hollywood's history, where we said we need the SnyderVerse restored. And at a certain point in time, well, immediately after that happened, the management of Warner Brothers said, "No, we're not going to be doing that." And they said, they have no plans for a sequel. Warner Brothers stock started to plunge almost immediately after that. And we've been hitting them hard since then. Because there's zero interest in it and us orchestrated boycott by most of the DC fans, DC hasn't been doing well since DC hasn't been doing well since 2017, but it really hasn't been doing well since 2021. After the management of Warner Brothers, which has changed hands since then, said that they have no plans of doing the sequels to Zack Snyder's Justice League. Pretty much, they've been in the dumpster, right? Their stock went to an all-time high. They had their stock was $76 a share. Their stock currently right now is under $8 a share. Okay. And that's because they just wouldn't listen to the fans. And for those of you out there who are boxing fans, for example, you do not understand what kind of power you have. And I will talk a little bit about that. I'll also talk a little bit about how you as a citizen of a country, how much power you have. So we'll be talking about mostly empowerment things, how much power you have as a person, as an individual, etc. So you guys might want to stick around for this. This is going to be a little bit interesting. I got a lot of stuff to say. So the theme is basically you have the power. And I'm going to explain everything to you so you will understand why you are so integral and so important to all business, to all governments, to all services, etc. So stick around. You'll learn a couple things, and then you will know how to implement change where you want change. If enough of you want change, it'll happen. But you have to be coordinated. You have to be systematic, etc. And I've been in a number of movements now, and a number of campaigns which are highly successful because, again, now I'm not saying it's not costly. What I mean by that is, so you're going to be reviled. Some of you are going to get murdered. Some of you, I'm being very, very serious right now. Some of you, when you make this commitment to do something, you have to understand that you are almost like a soldier. You're expendable. And so if it's not you, it's going to be somebody else. The thing about it is when we do movements, they're decentralized. There's no one leader. So if somebody tries to assassinate somebody to take them out, it doesn't really matter because the other people have the same information. They know what to do, and they just continue as usual. So I'm going to explain all of this to you guys. And I'm also going to explain to you guys a number of different things. So as you can see from the title, it's Restore the SnyderVerse. and we're talking mainly about the merchandising. We're talking mainly about um, why it's still essential. And we just talked about in Hollywood how the director of The Batman, the 2022 movie, how he actually kind of gives indirectly praise to Ben Affleck's The Batman, from which he stole the title from. And there's a long story behind that, but the short version of it is somebody in the industry is actually approving the stuff that we wanted to see. Okay. For those of you who don't know anything about the SnyderVerse, y'all don't know anything about our movement, I'll give you a quick synopsis. The SnyderVerse started in 2013. It came off of Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy. Okay. Batman had been in the slums for many, many years because I think in 1997, the Batman franchise went dead, mainly because Warner Brothers chose to get a certain tone for Batman, which was funny and jokey. They were trying to recapture the Adam West Batman of the 60s. And they used Mr. Schumacher, who was the director of the movie. They gave him strict commands to make Batman goofy and funny and so on, so that kiddies would get toys. Okay, they were all about selling and driving commerce, comics and toys and stuff like that. Because what you have to understand is leadership doesn't always understand what they're doing. We don't always have good leaders. All right, so there's so much to say on this, but let me keep it as brief as possible. When your leaders are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you need to hold them accountable. Okay? As Zack Snyder would say, violence has consequences to it. And so, one of the things about Zack Snyder's movies, or certain movies of the SnyderVerse, as we call it, the SnyderVerse, that would be the early DC films that came after the Dark Knight trilogy that were interconnected. So we're talking about Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, right? And then we had the atrocity that was called Justice League, right? Those particular films, those early films, they were critiqued very negatively by people in the industry, but they made a lot of money. And another thing about them was, as they aged with time, they aged really well with time. A lot of people jumped on board after seeing these films and really enjoyed them. And this is something about movies and industry in general. Life in general, actually. So those movies are known as the SnyderVerse. There's another movie that's not connected, that came many years later. So the last SnyderVerse movie was in 2017. It was Wonder Woman. Okay, just Wonder Woman, plain Wonder Woman, right? And then after that, we had a series, the management changed sort of like, and we had a series of movies that came out that a lot of people didn't go and see, they weren't interested in seeing. And then in 2021, and so all those movies flopped, by the way, except for Shazam and Aquaman. The remaining movies that DC flopped, okay? So we had, after Shazam and Aquaman, we had Birds of Prey that flopped. We had Wonder Woman 84 that flopped. We had the Suicide Squad that flopped. We had Black Adam that flopped. Now, in 2021, after much campaigning, after the fans and the audience had seen had seen Justice League in 2017, a lot of people said what they saw on the screen was nothing like what Zack Snyder would direct. And investigations went into that, and we found out that it was a very ugly scene that happened within the studio. The studio was pushing for a lighter tone and so on, and they were able, because Zack Snyder's daughter died, to get Zack Snyder out of there, and they just rehauled the whole thing with Joss Whedon. And the movie came out like a Frankenstein. It was horrible. No one really liked it, not the critics, no one. And it was because the executive arm pushed so hard for this to happen that it happened. We've been at war with the executive arm of Warner Brothers, even with change of regime, for years now. They will not listen to the fans who are asking them to do one thing, and you get the fans asking them to do one thing, and you get the executive arm doing the opposite. We've seen that with our governments as well in countries. In my country, the people want one thing, and the government that they elected is doing another thing. And we see this globally. We see this even in the American. I believe it is 68% of Americans, almost 70% of Americans, the last survey that was done, want a ceasefire in Palestine. And we see the government doing the absolute opposite. Their mouthing, their rhetoric is, we want a ceasefire, but their policy is quite illegal, by the way. In the American law, it's illegal. They are violating the Leahy law. And they are going about arming Israel right now and providing aid to Israel, which is illegal. Okay, it is illegal. And it's illegal under international law, and it's illegal under American law. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But what I'm trying to tell you is I've noticed that people who are put in power to manage things, put in power to lead and supposedly take care of people, whether they are in entertainment, whether they are in, defense, whether they are in the works ministries, they tend to take that power and they tend to serve corporate interest with that power. Capitalism. And I want to talk a lot more about that, but I'm just saying there's a dichotomy, there's a huge gap between people who are put in charge to do things and the will of the people. The people who are put in governance are not doing the will of the people. And there's a big gap. So the democracy is not happening. And more, the people who put these people in power, the people who finance these people for the most part, are getting more and more zero and less returns for putting these people to manage them. This is very important what I'm saying. And you will notice this in your society. You will notice that things are getting worse and worse around you. Things are getting more expensive. Things are getting more difficult. But you've put somebody to manage that. They're supposed to do a good job of giving you a return for your taxes, right? Everybody pays taxes here. Countries are run on taxation, mostly. In the United States of America, $2.2 trillion and more goes into the national economy through taxation. No other institution provides as much income to the federal government and to the government in general than through taxation of the common citizen, not corporations. Corporations don't pay that much money. They make much more money than the average citizen, much more. And corporations are significantly bigger. They are also, they're significantly bigger than the average household and so on. So you will ask yourself, why don't they pay their fair share of money to contribute back into the system, to plug back into the system? And we'll talk about capitalism, and we'll talk about socialism, and we'll explain to you why there must be a balance between capitalism and socialism, and then you have a benefit. What is socialism? Socialism is about trying to bring equity and balance to an economy and to a people so that everyone is taken care of. The right to have shelter, the right to eat, the rights of citizens are protected by socialist programs, which the government oversees. When that counterbalances capitalism, that is to say, for every single bit of responsibility you have, once you've gotten yourself and elevated yourself into a position where you are employing multiple people or whether you are making a considerable amount of income, you want to invest back into the people around you, your community, the society, etc. You want to invest back into that in socialist programs, in socialism. Socialism is not limited to a government, by the way. It is just the responsibility of a person to make sure that their environment around them is getting elevated, and you're injecting or you're investing into your human resource. So that's what socialism really is. So you will find in every single what am I looking for? Every single society or state has socialist programs. Social welfare is a socialist program to ensure that aged citizens who are now no longer working can attain an income. For example, in my country, we call it pensioners. The pensioners collect a pension. So even if you're in the private sector and you're finished a certain amount, an X amount of pension can be given to you based on your income. So if your income is not, your pension income from wherever you work is not more than $3,000, then social welfare provides income to you. Okay. If you are someone with disabilities, social welfare, again, provides income to you. That's in my country. So my country is a socialist democratic republic. Okay. It's a republic because there's representation. It's a democratic because people vote in bulk, and the will of the people is understood, even though they're constituencies and municipalities, etc., just like the United States. And in addition to that, but the United States has the electoral college, which kind of nullifies the democracy somewhat. But I'll talk about that in a little bit because it's representation, right? But in addition to that, you also have socialism. So socialism, so a democracy because of vote, and then you have socialism. Socialism is simply plugging back or investing into your human resource to make sure that their human rights are satisfied. And in addition, also investing into them so that they could become productive citizens to boost the country. For example, socialist programs are state funded, or they are, well, the state generally covers most of the socialist programs. However, if you are a very wealthy, for instance, oligarch, you can also start up socialist programs. You can start up social programs, whether it's you're sponsoring games, sport, you're sponsoring art, entertainment. Once you start sponsoring, once you start going to philanthropy, you start to become a socialist. Okay, so socialism is not limited only to a government, which is a misconception by a lot of people. Socialism is simply, I am plugging back into society. I am developing society. I've taken the responsibility upon myself to give back to society. That is socialism. Okay, we're not necessarily looking for any immediate profit to me. Okay, I'm taking care of the society until it can take care of itself. That's the understanding. Now, so every government in the world has socialist programs. Socialism helps to restrain, contain, and also help to develop capitalism such that capitalism is seen in a positive light. Capitalism says, I am looking to make as much profit as I possibly can with my business. And capitalism to the extreme is detrimental to a society. Because if I am only thinking about maximal profit for myself and only myself alone and my company as an individual, I'm very selfish. I'll be sucking from the society, but I will not be giving back anything to it. And this is what is happening in America. This is what's happening in my country. This is what's happening around the world. Some people develop from very humble, small beginnings, and then they begin to develop into huge, beautiful companies, and then they get selfish. And only the company is what matters, and and giving back is a big part of it. The more you make, the more you invest economically, is the more you have to be able to plug socialism into programs, be able to invest in programs, invest in individuals, invest in communities, invest in societies, and see them develop, because by them developing, you advertise more, your brand gets stronger, you get to last longer. Maybe you don't make as much money as if you were just hoarding, but your name, your reputation, your standard becomes something bigger. So it keeps capitalism in check, socialism, and the both of them play off of each other. You don't want too much socialism, and you don't want too much capitalism. Okay. Now, having said all of that, that's my country. My country is a republic, a democratic republic, socialist state. Okay. The United States of America is somewhat socialist. As I said before, you have things such as Social Security to protect people. You have something that's a horrible kind of, again, a Frankenstein in the Obamacare. It's a mess, but that's kind of like a socialist program because it was federally funded and also federally brought into being. It is still somewhat privatized socialism, but it's socialism. Okay. Another thing you have that is socialism is your transport system. I think that one of the bus companies, if I'm not mistaken, Did says, can I have a shout out? Shout out to Did. I don't know who you are, but shout out to you. So in Canada is also a socialist state, and it has a lot of social programs that the government funds. So China is a socialist capitalist state. I'm not saying it's democratic. I don't think there's a democracy there, but it is a socialist capitalist state. That's what it is. It's not a communist state. I don't think so anymore. Well, what people thought it was communism. I believe it's a socialist capitalist state. So they have private businesses that have invested in China and develop in there. And then the Chinese government funds research and development. They fund a number of programs. Oh, by the way, the federal government in the United States also funds things like Medicaid. I think they also fund things like research and development. So, the National Institutes of Health, etc. So there is, those are also socialist programs. Wherever the government is funding something, generally, it's not necessary to make profit. It's to develop the institutions so that they can go on to make profit, and then long term, that investment works back in the favor of the government. That's how socialism works. So that's what China does. Now, having said all that, what am I saying? What does this have to do with anything? I said that the people and the governments, there's a big divide. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. And the reason is because the business community and the thriving business communities in the private sector and the government in the public sector, they're not sufficiently investing back into the people. The heavy lifting should be done mostly by the federal government or the government itself, because they get the bulk of the money. But the private sector also is not pulling its weight. It's not investing back into communities. They're not doing a good job of that. And as a result of that, we're getting this divide where everyone should be benefiting. You look at China, everyone benefits more or less. When you look at places like even Saudi Arabia and these very wealthy countries, where wealth distribution is quite equivalent. Even though these economies and these societies are not necessarily democratic, they understand the general principle of socialism, plugging back, funding back into their population, their human resource, because your greatest wealth is your human resource. And when you can optimize your human resource in your given country, you are going to do extremely well, like Singapore, okay? So, and China. So that's the crux of the matter. Now, DID says, thank you. Okay. Now, I'm saying all of this because the governments that are in the United States right now, even Donald Trump, who has just been elected to power, his obligation is not to the American people. And the federal government is so distant from the American people that it's really difficult to really invest into the American people. And I want to say a couple of things about that. So, one, if you're dealing with a government such as the federal government, for example, the federal government passed general law. It doesn't pass specific laws to specific states. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to pass good law. If the federal government is passing laws, the state's government is supposed to modify those laws and accept or reject those laws, quite frankly. And then after that, they decide what it is they want to do in their given state. And in your local municipalities where you have leadership there, they fine tune that even further to say, okay, this is what we want for this law. We're not going to work with this. We're not working with this. Okay. So you have to understand that's how it works. Now, A lot of times, bad law is passed because it's too specific. Uh, it tells the states to do this, which the states don't necessarily have to abide by. And this is some of the things that you guys need to understand. You need to follow what is local government, for example, versus and the government that really has the greatest impact on you would be the local government, not the centralized government. The centralized government is so far removed from you, it's not funny. So the government that really can address your needs and should be empowered and should be boosted and should be really developed is the local government. Why am I saying all of this? Okay, so let's take, for instance, Donald Trump. Y'all, some of y'all elected, some of y'all voted for Donald Trump, and nothing's wrong with that. That's your right. That's your duty. But you had expectations coming from Donald Trump. You voted for him for a particular reason. And therefore, if that reason is not actualized by you, are you content with that? Now, I want to just say a couple things, and this goes for me and everybody else. I would speak about my localized government, but you guys don't want to care about that, so I'm not going to talk about it. If your governments have failed you, the things, and that's why I tell people, look at policy, don't look at rhetoric. If your governments promise certain things to you, policy-wise, and didn't deliver on it, why are you so stupid to elect them again? You should try someone else. So I say this because a lot of you are going to be a little bit disappointed at your choice, of electing a particular individual. You're going to be disappointed if you were expecting a certain outcome. But the good news is you averted a very dangerous situation by voting for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are engaged in an active genocide right now. And so those of you who have elected Donald Trump over Kamala Harris did the right thing, because he at present is not conducting a genocide. Now, if he starts to conduct a genocide with Benjamin Netanyahu, then you have all right to vote him out next year. Because genocide, there's a difference between genocide and any other crime. It's a mass murder crime. It's a tremendously horrific crime. It's a crime of all crimes. And we don't want to be associated with that now. Because if they would massacre Palestinians in Palestine, you could bet your ass they'll massacre you on American soil. They get away with it in Palestine, they're going to try it on you. Okay? They'll find something. They'll find something to say about you, and then they're going to wipe you out. Okay? But you have to understand what your power is. A lot of you do not seem to understand your power. So let me explain it to you. As I said before, you pay the government to work for you. You pay taxes. If you pay taxes, you are paying the government. Not they are extracting money from you. You are paying them to do a good job, to run the country. Okay? They are accountable to you. I want you to understand that. The power is yours. I want you to I will repeat myself, because I know a lot of you do not understand what I'm saying, because you're thinking of yourself as an individual. You collectively pay out $2.2 trillion on average to the American government. Okay? You don't have to, but you do. Whether it's through your business boss, who takes it out of your account automatically, or it is through you filing actual tax monies yourself. You do it. This is very important to understand. You pay the government to do a job for you. It's not the other way around. Okay? They will say it's your civic duty. You have to pay taxes. That's what they'll say. But you don't have to pay taxes. You don't. I want to say it again. I know a lot of you are worried the IRS will come for me. No, that's bully tactics. Listen to me carefully again. You don't have to pay dilly squat. Okay? But you do. And that's because the government needs your money to run the country. Very much like businesses need your money to stay in existence. Now, from that position, you as a collective are extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. You're very, very powerful. Now let's try and go this over again. The governments of whatever country you're in depend on you to pay them to manage the country. You also elect them in a democracy to become the leaders of you. Now, this also goes for commerce and business. Without you, there is no money and cash flow, there are no sales, and therefore there's no business. You sustain the business community, both private and government. You, the one that pay them to do what they do. Whether it's entertainment, whether it's sport, whether it's defense, national security, healthcare, food and nutrition and products, you are absolutely necessary. So now, understand your position of power. You're the boss. What you say goes. The customer is always right. You're the customer. Now, what happens is people who manage businesses, they feel because they've acquired some wealth from it, from many of you helping them generate this wealth, they feel they don't need you and they don't need to be accountable to you. People will buy their stuff anyway. And we see it in boxing. And we see it in the entertainment industry, where these executives think that because they gross a lot of money and they have a lot of sway in Hollywood or have a lot of sway in the boxing community, that they don't have to listen to the fans. They don't have to listen to you. In fact, a lot of them will say the fans make up the minority of real boxing, that really and truly casual fans make most of boxing. Therefore, they don't need to listen to you. This is their arrogance. This is the stark obnoxiousness of those who have been put in that position because of you. I want you to understand clearly what I'm saying, because what I'm about to say will empower you. Enrod says, I'm the general, the rude boy. Boombaklat. Yes, sir. You better believe it. You're the one that determines the success of an industry or not, particularly you as a collective. The problem with us is we don't know how to mobilize. We don't know how to coordinate. We have a self-defeating behavior. And we have to think differently. And I'm going to give you what makes you so important and why you can make or break something. Okay, I've been in a number of movements, so I know how this goes. Richard Fielding says, have you ever seen the knockout highlights of Haywood Jablom, fighter out of Kenya? No, my friend, I don't know who that is. We'll talk about that some other time. I'm actually talking about a different topic. If you want to stick around, fine. All right, so I'm going to now go into something that has to do with Palestine, because as you can see, it's Free Palestine there. And everything I just said is going to apply to this. And I'm going to suggest some ways for you to take action as well. And then from there, I'm going to come back to the boxing entertainment industry, and I'll talk a little bit about that and what you could do in that industry, which is successful. It will prove very successful if you do it. Now, mind you, these are things that I have applied in other industries. I have not really applied it in the boxing industry, okay? So let's start with Free Palestine. Now, with respect to Free Palestine, which I am in complete solidarity with the people of Palestine, that they should have self-determination, the occupation should end, and also that they should be treated equally as human beings. The major problem with what is happening in Gaza, what's even happening in Lebanon right now, and what Israel wants to expand to Iran, is that the United States of America, the UK, and Germany particularly, even though France is also involved, and some other countries like the leadership of the Netherlands, are complicit, completely complicit in this. They want this genocide to happen. They are siding with Israel, and they are riding with Israel, and they are arming Israel, and they are also funding this genocide that Israel is carrying out, and the terror that it's doing and terrorizing the region. They've gone rogue, and they're terrorizing the region. Now, for those, some of you will say, oh, no, Israel has a right to defend itself, and October 7th, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this without even having to think twice. One, which country is stealing land right now? Two, which country is mass killing human beings? If you look at Hezbollah, if you look at Hamas even, both of these agencies have been attacking military targets. Even Iran, when it attacked Israel, attacked military targets. Furthermore, it is very important for people to understand that in the West Bank right now, Israel is kicking people out their land, killing people and murdering people. There's no Hamas in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And they are just taking over the property, other people's homes, other people's places. And the West Bank has been, most people have done clear studies in the West Bank. And it's clear that in the West Bank, for generations, soldiers should just apprehend a house, go inside of people's houses, hold them hostage in their own homes. It's been atrocious. They've been murdering people. They have multiple checkpoints. This has been going on since 1967. And what has been an illegal occupation, what the ICJ has classed as an illegal occupation that must end immediately. You can't go around stealing people's land and displacing them from their land and telling them they can't come back to their land. Nowhere on earth has that ever been acceptable. Now, it has happened before. It has happened with the United States. And the United States was funded upon the genocide of the Native American peoples, to the point that these so-called people who fled persecution, supposedly, and went onto American soil, agitated against the Native American peoples, brought the French, the British, along with them, and committed mass genocide against the Native American peoples who lived there. In my country, Native American peoples lived in my country as well. They used biological warfare to kill them off because the Native American peoples were kicking their ass when it came to war, because what is known as guerrilla warfare is something that these people knew how to do. They fought with tribes and stuff like that. And the Native American peoples in my country, they befriended them and they infected them with something called smallpox. So they were able to enslave them, defeat them. However, they were not able to do that in Guyana and Jamaica because the slaves that were brought to Guyana, the African slaves, joined up with the Native American peoples and took the high ground, both in Jamaica and in Guyana. They moved into the interior. They would escape their masters and go into the interior onto the high ground. And they were able to kick their ass and kick them out of the country and avoid biological warfare, which these people would bring with them, germs, in bags to spread the disease to kill these people. Okay? In the end, Christopher Columbus ended up in prison the rest of his life because there was a mutiny on his ship. Okay? So this is what happened. And I am a descendant of one of those Native American people. We were known as the Caribs. We came from Venezuela, Guyana, and the interior. I'm half Taino. I am also a descendant of the Jewish Sephardic Jews. So anybody tries to talk to me about Judaism and Zionism and all this bullshit, you better step correct, because I know the story properly. Okay? All right. So keeping it moving. So my point being this, that what Israel is doing is wrong. It is a genocide. I see some guy named Steak and Cheese. I think he's saying Steak and Cheese. And he's denying that there's a genocide there. And the UN Convention on Genocide, the Genocide Convention, outlines what a genocide is. And essentially a genocide is this. A genocide is the targeting of a people to get rid of them from an area. And they go under specific, they go under specific criteria. You can kill them. You can move them without their consent, which is ethnic cleansing. You can put conditions in place so that they cannot sustain their lives. That is to cause a famine on them. And you can also prevent the birth of children. So you have more stillbirths. You're killing off their children. All of this is genocide. And all these things are happening in Gaza. In fact, they have issued laws now that the people need to move out of northern Gaza and they cannot return to their homes in northern Gaza. That is essentially ethnic cleansing. But some people have disregarded that order and they're still in northern Gaza because they said no place in Gaza is safe. So they're still up there. Okay. The argument that Hamas lives amongst the people and use them as human shields is rather juvenile. It's when we look at southern Lebanon, for example, Hezbollah is fighting them at the border. Hezbollah is not amongst the people. Hamas is not fighting amongst the people. Hamas is fighting. The combat zone is outside of where the people are. Hamas is aware of this, so they're not going to be where the people are. When Sinwar was murdered, Sinwar was fighting in buildings outside of where the refugee camps were when they took it. So, no, Hamas and Hezbollah do not fight amongst civilians. In fact, for those of you who don't know, yes, Hamas is cited as a terrorist organization by the United States of America as well as Hezbollah. But just to educate you guys, because I realize a lot of you guys don't know, you just eat the Kool-Aid of whatever the media tells you out there. And the media has been wrong about a lot of things, including what has happened recently in Amsterdam. But Hamas has rules. The soldiers and combatants are guerrilla warfare fighters. And again, I told you my ancestors were involved in guerrilla warfare. The Caribs, which came from Venezuela and so on, they have, millennia of fighting other tribes and so on. And the use of guerrilla warfare is as follows. You use the cover of the area around you to hide and not be available, set traps for your adversary, your enemy, and you let them walk into the traps. This is guerrilla warfare. The Viet Cong did it. The Koreans did it. You have right now the Palestinians are doing it. At least Hamas is doing it, and Hezbollah is doing it. This is why Israel's taking a lot of casualties in their ground invasion, trying to come into southern Lebanon. They can't get very far because the whole place is booby-trapped. And besides it being booby-trapped, the terrain is irregular. When you have hilly terrain and you have different kinds of terrain, and Hezbollah knows the terrain, you're walking into traps all the time. Okay? That's guerrilla warfare. So you don't have to have superior weaponry for guerrilla warfare. You just have to have great knowledge of an area. And that's what the Viet Cong pushed back up the mighty United States of America. They bombed up Cambodia, killed thousands and millions of people, with their bombing campaigns. And this is not something unique to Israel. This is something that America has done. They bombed Iraq. They assassinated Gaddafi. Assad in Syria, they've been agitating conflict in Syria for years. And Assad had to take it down. This is why Russia is still with the Assad regime and Hezbollah is with the Assad regime. Yes, Assad did kill a lot of citizens. But the amplification of how the West is portraying this, they're not saying how subversive the CIA and Mossad have been in this whole process. It's what's happening in Venezuela. A lot of people are turning against Moderna because of sanctions and because of CIA Mossad activity trying to agitate the people against the government. So if you don't understand this kind of stuff, you're going to talk real stupidly. You have to understand it as a civilian. You have to understand it as a citizen. The American government, federal American government at least, very few individuals in that government care about you, the people. Their allegiance is to the corporations and the oligarchs, the wealthy. They get paid. The Israeli lobby, the different lobbying groups pay them to vote on bills, to try to persuade them. Some of them get millions of dollars. That corruption will compromise their representation of you. We saw this in the Roman Republic, where Roman officials got corrupted by greed and money. And we're seeing this in the American empire, in the UK empire, etc. These politicians only want to fill their pockets. This is why the Israeli lobby can easily not only vote in politicians, their people they want, but also get politicians elected and also get politicians to follow their agenda because they're giving them money. They're funding them. Some of them are under ideological grounds because some politicians are Zionists. But for the most part, when you fund people like that, they don't have the moral integrity to realize that they should stand up on certain issues, represent humanity. The way how the U.S. government is conducting themselves in this matter is atrocious to the rest of the world. But not just the U.S. government. We're seeing it also in Western governments, in the U.K., in Germany, in certain aspects of what just recently happened in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, with the Dutch government. Hook, line, and sinker, they're being bought out. And they're saying these pre-rehearsed scripts. We see it in our bought out media that's corrupt. Imagine Sky News had the original correct account of what happened in Amsterdam. They took that and edited it to make it look like there was anti-Semitism and a program going on in Amsterdam. It's a lie. The unfiltered footage of the Sky News report says something totally different to what they tried to portray. And that sort of deception by media houses shows you how corrupt these institutions are. But what do you expect when the CIA is not being overseen properly? And it's a corrupt organization to its core. They're only to benefit the rich corporate structures. When they talk about American interests, it is sure as fuck not your own. They don't give a fuck about you, the citizen. As the American empire falls down more and more, you are going to suffer more and more. Not these oligarchs, not these corporate heads. They'll be fine. Not the politicians either. Their pockets will be full. They're robbing the train before it crashes. And the ones who are going to crash in that train are not them. It's going to be you. You who funded them. You who paid them to do a good job. You're the one that's going to suffer. And they've been doing a great job at running that train into the ground. You're paying them to destroy your country. Think about what I'm saying. So, what can you do about it? What can you, a citizen of whatever country you're in, do to stop it? It depends on what the framework of your country is. If it's a democracy and if it has laws, it's time for you to look at those laws. It's also time for you to know, as a civilian of that country and a citizen, what are your rights? So we're going to go to America and we're going to talk a little bit about their rights there and what you can do with regard to Israel and these countries that are supporting it in its genocide. So I will start off with this. In the United States of America, hold on one second. Okay. All right. In 1997, Senator Leahy put before Congress something known as the Leahy Law. It began really as a war on crime, dealing with narcotics, but it was expanded later on to involve any sort of gross violation of human rights, okay? The Leahy Law goes like this. The Leahy Law prohibits U.S. assistance to foreign security force units when there is credible information that the unit has committed a gross violation of human rights. Pursuant to the laws, before providing assistance, the U.S. government vets potential recipients for information about gross violation of human rights involvement. Under the Leahy Law, if you can prove that the IDF is committing gross violations of human rights, citing examples, numerous examples, and showing that it's systematic, under the Leahy Law, you can prosecute the United States of America for continuing, even after the fact that they know these violations have occurred, to fund and arm Israel. Why is this very important? Because this year, July 19th of 2024, The ICJ, the International Court of Justice, ruled that there must be an arms embargo on Israel to end all commercial activities that may damage Palestinians, and targeted sanctions, including asset freezes on Israeli individuals or entities involved in illegal occupation, racial segregation, and apartheid policies. Goes on to say, laws which penalize opposition or impede advocacy against Israel's occupation must be rescinded. It continues, they call on the international community to challenge Israel's deliberate efforts to rewrite the rules of international law to legitimize potentially genocidal violence against all Palestinians. Now, let me break that down for you. The International Criminal Court requests an arms embargo on Israel. That is to say, no country should be sending Israel arms because the International Criminal Court has found Israel in breach of illegal occupation in the Palestinian territories, as well as apartheid operation, as well as it has also been found to have activities that may damage Palestinians. So the Leahy Law and the ruling by the International Criminal Court overlap. Gross violation of human rights are clearly seen on TikTok, where the soldiers proudly present what they have been doing. There are so many images, and then the government has said it's so many words, exactly in line with the actions that we've seen. And in fact, there's ethnic cleansing going on in northern Gaza. Official government statements have said that and confirmed that. So these are gross violations of human rights. And so right now, Mr. Joe Biden, Mrs. Kamala Harris, and their cabinet and their official government members are in violation of the Leahy Law, as well as in violation of the ICJ's ruling. And if they say, well, we don't recognize the ICJ, no problem. You are going to recognize federal law. The Leahy Law is federal law. And you are in breach and in violation of federal law. Good. Now, why is this important? What I'm about to tell you is how you can take action as a citizen of the United States of America. But so that you know, in other countries that recognize the ICJ, Spain has suspended all ports so that none of its ports will accept any American ship carrying arms to Israel. Furthermore, Sweden and the Netherlands has suspended all sending of equipment for military craft and any kind of military aid that needs to go to Israel. Also, France has been moving to put sanctions on Israel, stopping any business trade or any transaction with them because of the genocide and also because of the occupation in Israel. These countries have immediately started to put measures in place to follow the ICJ. The UK has been talking, they've been giving a lot of lip service, but they've stopped some military arms transfer to Israel, but they have not stopped all. Okay. Now, what can you do as an American citizen? We'll start with you, and then we'll say what you as citizens of the world can do. So we'll talk about that right now. One, since it is illegal by federal law for America to continue arming Israel and also sending, oh, I left out something from the ICJ here. No, I haven't. I said it. All assets should be frozen. All assets should be frozen for individuals or entities who have been conducting, involved in illegal occupation, racial segregation, and apartheid policies. Okay? So the law for anyone who chooses to enact it or to function under it gives you as a citizen cover. You're not going to do something that's illegal, whatever it is. You are working towards getting this law to be enforced. If the government won't enforce this law that you are paying to govern properly, then you must take back the power into your hands, collectively speaking. Now it is up to you to ensure that this law is adhered to. You see, what a lot of democracies do not understand, a lot of citizens do not understand is you have passed on the power temporarily to your governments to manage your country. This is the principle behind democratically elected governments. However, if that power that is delegated to them is being misused, it is up to the citizenry to now take back that power. And this is something that a lot of you who haven't studied civics do not understand. Remember, the people who pay the government to operate is you. You. So you are the boss. They are supposed to do what you expect them to do. Take care of you. You paid them to take care of you. And if they can't do a goddamn good job, then they need to leave, or you take it back over. You take back the power and you do what is necessary. And that's the part that a lot of you don't know. You think you're powerless. Okay? Let's see what we're saying here. Stay Kanchi says it's war. I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about? Israel with Gaza? It's war. That doesn't mean shit. See, after 1948, the United Nations formed something called the Genocide Convention. Its war is bullshit because in The Hague, Nazis were tried for war crimes. So telling me it's war doesn't mean that you get to slaughter and annihilate civilians. That is illegal. That's why the Nazis were prosecuted in The Hague. Several decades after they did their act, but nonetheless they were. Okay? So you can't just go around murdering people and get away scotch-free. Fuck no. Got it? I hope so, because it's coming. Nishanth M says, is America a country? I don't know. Is it? Nishanth M says, stop yapping, bro. I'll stop yapping when you have something constructive to say. Till then, I will continue yapping. Because I actually have something to say. And I realize you don't. Continuing. So what can you do? All right. As I said before, America is made up and a lot of democracies around the world are made up of a centralized government, and then you have local governments. So one of the things you can do now, already some of you out there are protesting, and that's cool. Protests are good. Making noise, bringing attention to things, that's good. Protests are good, but they are limited in what they can do. If you want to make people feel your presence, you have to do more than just protest. You have to do more than just bring people's attention to things. But it's very important to bring people's attention to things. Twitter has done a great job of that. But there's more. You have to be able to do more. And then we're going to talk about that now. So the one thing that you can do, and it's very easy to do, is you have to realize the law is on your side. So as the law is on your side, that means you can go to NGOs, to nonprofits, to get money and funding. You personally don't have to do this. So you can get a collection of lawyers, whatever. And you can go into a court of law and take the federal government to court. Okay? You can take them to court for breach of the Leahy law. And you prove your case. And there are two different ways you can go about this. You can go about this as a civil lawsuit, or you can go about this as a criminal lawsuit. You're going to do this first in your given state. You're not going to do it on the federal stage with the Supreme Court and all that. You're going to do it in your given state. In your given state, you also have your Congresses there, you have your Senates there, you have your governors, etc. If enough of you make enough noise and your state is opposed to the government's decision to arm Israel, take, for instance, the representative of Congress, Ilhan Omar, who is in Minnesota, I believe she is. If her state of Minnesota is opposed, because she represents the state of Minnesota, if her state of Minnesota is opposed to Israel being armed, for example, they can go and appeal, write a letter to the governor of the state. And then the governor of the state can convene with the legislature, and they can pass a bill, or they can pass law or they can pass a motion. A motion is the best thing. Pass a motion saying that the government is doing illegitimate acts in breach of the Leahy law, and they can carry a lawsuit against the government. So it's that simple. Okay. So on the state level, you can pass laws against that. Furthermore, they can pass a bill or a law, or they can push a motion that any business within their state which is in breach of the Leahy law can be penalized, their assets can be frozen, and they can be brought to court on criminal charges. So on the state level, you can impact tremendous change, particularly the states which have ports, whether it's an airport in that state, whether it's a port of entry where ships come and go. If in that state you are opposed to what the government is doing and think they and know by law that what they're doing is legal, they should not be arming Israel, they should not be funding Israel, then you can do that within the legislature of your state, and you can get things to be frozen, accounts to be done, and you can bring up companies and organizations, contractors, etc., and you can have them. You can freeze everything, and then you can have an investigation into these different contracted areas, businesses, to ensure that no armed transport goes back to Israel. So even if the government continues to arm Israel, there are measures you as the citizenry at the state level, at the administrative state level, can do to freeze, to hold, to stop, to frustrate, to sabotage the movement of arms across to Israel. I'm going to give you some more It's quite elaborate. There's a lot. But you guys can open up the Pandora's box and look at it yourself. The next measure you can take, there are many, but another measure that you can take, those of you who are in the military, if you are in the military and you are working with a contractor who is involved in the production of arms, you can get a warrant as an investigated military personnel, get a warrant to look at their inventories. If their inventory has any transactions with Israel, then you can subpoena that contractor, again at the state level, and you can have them investigated for illegal transfer of arms in breach of the federal law. This is a federal law now, the Leahy law, and they could be up on federal charges. It's that simple. Let's continue. The other things you can do is, if you work in a company like that, which is selling munitions or is involved in money transfers to Israel with regards to their military, the IDF, which has done multiple war crimes, or as described in the ICJ, have had, not ICJ, the Leahy law, have had gross violation of human rights, then you too must be able, because the law is behind you, you must be able to either whistleblow them, or you can go ahead and have what we call a citizen's arrest. You, as a citizen, can arrest anyone. And these are rights you have, and you must know your rights. You can impose a citizen's arrest on a police officer. With sufficient amounts of you can do that. And so there are certain rights that you have that you must know, and that's why you need to study civics. You can arrest people directly related to, you have to investigate it first though, people directly related to these actions. You have to know where the goods are going, etc. So you'll have to do some investigations. The other thing is to hire private investigators, PIs, to investigate certain companies, etc., and bring back information to you as citizens. Again, you can rely on the police officers to do that, but you can also hire a private investigator to look into the matter for you as a citizen. See, there are lots and lots of things you can do as a citizen that you don't flex, you don't utilize, you don't effect. You do not understand how powerful you are. And I'm not just talking individuals, I'm talking collectively. It's ridiculous how much power you have as a collective. You have to, I mean, just the sheer numbers, you're millions of people. Just collectively, you're a lot. And it's all about just organizing yourselves and systematically approaching this. All right, let's continue. Now, even on a much more specialized, much more localized level, at ports of entry and exit, the port, not authorities, but the people who work at the port can either, in protest, issue strikes. If they don't want to issue strikes, they can sabotage the vessels that will be transshipping arms to Israel. If you know that these ships are transporting arms to Israel, you can either sabotage them. I don't care what you do, because once you don't kill people, but if you completely sink the ships that are carrying the arms to Israel, it's in breach of the Leahy law, so it's fair game. Okay, so you can go as far as blowing up the ships, making sure nobody's on board. You don't want to kill any human life, then you're gonna get in trouble, y'all. But if you are hell-bent on these ships not leaving port, the Native Americans recently, in one of their ports, stopped the ship and detained a ship from going to Israel. So citizenry and people on the port were able to stop that from happening. You can also make public protests on top of that while that is going on, to draw attention to it so that more people will know and more people will take action. So that's another way of doing it. Again, it's mostly physically. You're getting yourself involved. You decided the government's not going to do anything. We're going to do something. And you take over. Okay? And you make it extremely difficult for the U.S. to arm Israel from this point onwards. You're going to frustrate all efforts. You're going to stop as much as possible, and you are going to take names and call numbers in the law, in the court of law. A lot of people are going to go to the court of law. Some people are going to go to federal prison. Okay, if you can argue your case well, and you have a good set of lawyers hired to take on these people. All right. So there are other ways of going about doing this as well. So in addition to protests, in addition to dealing with the states who are willing to work with you, in addition to dealing at the court level with people and NGOs who will fund you to make sure that that happens. Remember, 65%, 68% of Americans want a ceasefire, 68% of Americans want disarmament of Israel. So you are in the majority here. You just have to coordinate that majority, and you have to start taking systematic action against the government that is ignoring law. And because the law is on your side, you really have a lot of leeway here, a lot of wiggle room. So let's go to yet another thing that you can do. So the other thing you need to do is, as citizens, is coordinate with other nations and citizens of other countries and nations. Just like how the youths and college campuses all around the world started to do coordinated protests. Similarly, you as individuals who are against the arming of Israel will need to coordinate with other countries. We already know Spain's in on it. France is in on it. I think either the Netherlands or one of those countries is in on it. And there's some other European nations. Africa is in on it. A lot of African countries, Brazil. I think somebody put sanctions on them recently. I think it was Brazil or I can't remember. One of the Latin American countries. South Africa has long since put sanctions on Israel. So those are the countries you're looking at. You want to look at the countries also where the ships have to pass to go to Israel to deliver the arms. You also want to look at the banks, follow the money to see where this transaction of money is going to Israel or to contractors to pay them for arming Israel, or to give Israel to pay them to keep their economy afloat so that they can finance the war. All of these things you need to pay attention to. Okay, there are countries like Turkey and even Saudi Arabia is kind of changing their minds about how they deal with it. By the way, in Turkey, people went to the ports when they realized ships were still doing transactions with Israel, and they burnt the ships down, and they started sabotaging the ships and destroying the ships and shit like that. So other people around the world are doing what I'm telling you here. This is not just pie in the sky bullshit I'm talking here. This is things that are actually happening. Okay. The people have taken it into their hands. They don't trust their governments, and they're taking action now. Okay. They don't trust the media. They don't trust governments. So what I'm telling you here is a worldwide phenomenon that's happening. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So I want you to be in on the ball game there. So it's important that you coordinate with other countries so that there's more resistance, because if these ships have to go from America all the way down to Israel, if the ships have to go from the UK to Israel, if the ships have to go from Germany to Israel, if planes have to go from Germany to Israel, as they touch down in the airports, there should be people working in the airport who are Free Palestine, and they're supposed to search the ships or search the planes. And if there's munitions, if there's weapons on it, that they stall the plane, they arrest the people who have transported these weapons, and interrogate them. In other words, we got to make it so difficult for anything to go to Israel that they don't have the weaponry to fight their wars, and therefore they have to negotiate for a ceasefire. That's what we have to do. We have to dry there. We have to hold them by the neck, wring them by the neck, and make sure that they're running out of oxygen. And when they tap out, that's when we say, okay. So that's what has to happen. And we have the backing of the International Criminal Court for other countries, the European countries, African countries, Latin American countries. And for the United States of America, who says, I'm not going to listen to the ICJ, we got the Leahy Law. So we got him by the neck. We got him. We got him. Now it's just for us to act on those laws. The laws are put in place. They now need to be executed. And what I'm telling you right here, though, there's a couple things you need to understand. The first thing you need to understand is what you're about to do is going to be dangerous, which means your life's going to be on the line. You know, these people are vicious. They're going to target civilians. They're going to target individuals, and they're going to go after them. And they're going to try and take everything from you, your family, your friends, everything. They're going to try and kill you. These are nasty people. But having said that, fuck them. Do what is right. Do what you are empowered to do. They depend on you. You don't depend on them. They depend on you. They need you. If they don't have your taxes, if they don't have your money, they can't do shit. And it's your money that's paying for these weapons. So it's time you take you take over responsibility from these fucking people, and you make sure that your money doesn't go to shipping weapons overseas. It's time your money doesn't go to filling the purses of these wicked people who are only waging war and killing other people, innocent people. And by the way, this is the last thing I want to say. Israel's campaign for stealing land in Lebanon, in Syria, in Gaza, and in the West Bank, and in East Jerusalem has come when they have always been attacking civilians mostly. 70% of the deaths in Gaza are women and children. 70%. Telling you they're attacking citizens. They're not citizens. They're not citizens. Civilians. It's just a no-no. Right now they're bombing Beirut in Lebanon. They can't beat the fighters. The actual Hezbollah is kicking their ass on the border. Hamas recently killed a whole bunch of them. They've been blowing up tanks, their tanks, and their weaponry. They're good at killing people like you and me who don't have combat experience. They're very good at that. They're good at attacking and assassinating people when they're not looking, like what happened in Tehran, where they assassinated the head of Hamas. They're so good at assassinating people, but for some reason, they got to bomb the shit out of civilians and kill them. You're good at assassinating people. So you telling me if you really wanted to get Hamas, you couldn't get Hamas? You know what I mean? Husky 2407 says, and they murt. I don't know what that means, bro. You gotta break that down for me. Husky 247 says, and they also good at Gupu. My point being, they got to go and ethnically cleanse. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to make Beirut, Lebanon, unlivable. They're trying to make Gaza unlivable, and so push the people out. That's what they're trying to do. They're not succeeding, but they're trying to do that. Okay? The people are resisting. And that sort of strategy comes from America. This is what America did in Iraq. They went into a war that they had no grounds to go into. They preemptively attacked Iraq. Didn't make the region any safer because they did it. They went into Syria. They're in Syria. But because the Russians are in Syria, the Russians are keeping them in check. And when you look at what's happening in Ukraine, everybody's beginning to realize Russia ain't a country to fuck with. You do not fuck with Russia. You'll get away with some other countries, but not Russia. And monkeys know which tree to climb. You don't fuck with Iran either. NATO, the US, and Israel going at Iran is now officially suicide. Because guess who is backing Iran and supporting Iran? Russia. You don't want to fuck with Russia. Russians always win. You know what I mean? You fuck with Russia and you will end up extinct. I'll give you 2 reasons. 1, the Russians have a history of war. Most of their wars, they have won. 2, Russia, like Iran, is an extremely big country. Iran's been preparing for the United States attacking them since about 2 or 3 decades ago, before the Gulf War. And Russia ain't gonna let Iran get dusted like that. They're not gonna do that. Okay? Neither is China. They both have invested interest in Iran because they get resources from Iran. They're not gonna allow that. So if you wanna fuck with death, fuck around with Russia and see what happens. Oh, by the way, newsflash. Israel's not the only one with nuclear weapons. Iran is nuclear ready now. That time has long since passed. See, should never have attacked Iran. Now, they're nuclear ready. They got nuclear weapons now. Kim Jong-un, North Korea, he got nuclear weapons now. He's also nuclear ready. Russia helped him. Kim Jong-un is nuclear ready. Also, Iran is now nuclear ready. Shouldn't have fucked around with Iran. They wasn't playing. They're nuclear ready now. So, if Israel really want to play that game, because they're talking about Iran's so evil, blah, blah, we need America to go in Iran. Okay, fuck around and see what happens. Fuck around and find out. Okay? Iran has said, if you do anything and you try to invade with Hezbollah, we're going to send troops. There are Iranian troops in Lebanon, special forces. The Lebanese are not fighting by themselves anymore. So, yesterday, there was a big attack on Tel Aviv. Missiles landed on military installations in Tel Aviv from Lebanon, southern Lebanon. Hezbollah fired a number of rockets, took out a couple facilities. And I'm going to say this. Israel's playing a very dangerous game. It's not going to end well for them. And America is playing a very dangerous game. And it ain't going to end well for them either. But you are going to suffer the brunt of it as citizens. Even though you don't want this war, you want a ceasefire. And you are not the ones wasting your money on that instead of on the hurricane victims of Helene. And instead of helping build up your social platforms and your social society so that people can get a higher wage, people can get proper health care, people could get proper paying jobs, people could get to launch their small businesses and be prosperous as they were in the 90s. And I know a lot of y'all do not like what is happening when it comes to that. The American economy should be doing very well. It is not doing well. The very, very rich are doing well. People are graduating from school and they have no work. I will say this one more thing. The Chinese are not America's enemy. The Chinese are competitors. While it's true that the American economy will not catch up with China anytime soon, that doesn't mean that you can't learn from them. And it doesn't mean that you can't still contribute in a significant way to the world economy and to the world on a whole. It's just that you're no longer the superpower in the world. Everybody's not going to just listen to you. You're not going to be able to police everybody. People are going to choose which pathway they want to go. And so Ed Roy says it is doing well. Yeah, China's doing very well. China's doing very well. And I mean, you see Chinese everywhere. You know, we got the Chinese supermarkets in our area. We got the Chinese gambling places in my country. We got the Chinese, you know, they usual Chinese food restaurants and stuff like that. They're cool people. They're cool people. They all right, you know. I personally don't think the Chinese. I know the Chinese when it comes to money and management. You know, they did some shit with the Africans, and the Africans said "fuck you" and they kicked them out of the country. But you know, most of Africa right now does business with Russia. And the Russians have a great history if you go and really study their history, because Russia is made up of so many different peoples of all kinds. You have Muslims there, we have Christians in Russia, we have Jews in Russia, we have other religions that are in Russia, you know. We have, you know, Chinese influence in Russia. Russia's a big place, huge place, right? So the Russians are helping out the Africans right now. And, you know, Putin says so many true things, man. He's a good guy. He's a humble guy. You know, y'all make him out to be a villain, but he's not really a villain. He's a cool guy. He has to preserve himself, you know, politically, but other than that, he's a real cool guy. He's a cool dude. He's a wise guy. He's very strategic in what he does. And for that reason, you know, I kind of have respect for the guy. And I'm beginning to realize guys like Kim Jong Un, you know, these so-called strongmen that do say some shit though. They're kind of like Trump. They say a whole set of crazy shit, but actually, while he has to kind of control foreign influence on his country because he's so close next to the U.S. military bases, that's why they took the measures they did. And you know, the West villainized him for that. It was his way to protect himself until he got the nuclear weapons. He knew once he got the nuclear weapons, there'd be some respect, you know. And they didn't want North Korea to get nuclear weapons, because if North Korea get nuclear weapons, they're like, man, we can't bully them around and bullshit, you know. And we can't villainize them, you know. They might nuke us. It's a deterrent. Nuclear weapons are a deterrent, more than to be used. Even though, I mean, if the shit hit the fan, folk gonna pull it. You know what I'm saying? It's a last resort kind of weapon. But I just wanted to say that to let people know that out here, there are things you can do. All right. Aside from that, so you can always hold your governments accountable, but you have to mobilize people. That's always the hardest part, because you have disinformation to get through to convince people that it's the truth. But once they are convinced that it's the truth, you can show them what they need to do. A lot of people are comfortable being comfortable. So, you know, like the movie The Matrix, when you come out of the Matrix, it's a little harder, but you're doing it with a cause in mind, to free people, to free them from systems of oppression. And a lot of you don't realize you're even in the system of oppression. You're in the Matrix, but you don't realize you're a slave to the Matrix. So, you know, people like myself and people in the business community, they understand it better. Somebody who's going 9 to 5, they don't really understand it, because they're so socialized and brainwashed into believing this is the way life should be. And you hear them all the time saying, well, you need to get a job, marry, have a good family, take care of that family, and that's it. And you paying bills your whole entire life, not realizing your taxes are making people rich, and they're not they're not plugging that money back into the system so that your life could get better. You're always living one spot in time, having to stretch the dollar to make ends meet. And that's not how life should be. And it's getting more and more worse. It's getting worse now because people can't even get housing. There's no affordable housing. There's no affordable rent. It's making people homeless. And you got to think about that. Think about the fact that the next generation is going to have it even harder than you have it. That's not where you want to go. So think about these things. Um, so it's the fall of the American Empire. I just thought I would talk about that a little bit and talk about what you could do to deal with that. And these are some of the measures that we took also in Restore the SnyderVerse campaign, where we were able to get the Snyder Cut. And then after that, we were able to push a very powerful multi-corporation company like Warner Brothers to their knees. And right now they are struggling. They went from 40 something dollars a share to now under $8 a share. We're trying to get it down to 5. They're looking to sell off DC very soon. And when they do, some of us may buy shares up in DC, and then that might help us to determine what we want to do. But I also think that if they do sell off DC, hopefully we can influence who next buys DC, and also we can influence um, getting our entertainment that we want. But like I said before, it's very strategic, and even though it's organic, it's also very strategic what we're doing, and we're successful with it. We've been successful also with the BDS movement. A lot of companies, their stock has gone down. A lot of companies, they've lost a lot of their sales in their products because we have boycotted them. We've also now have the ICJ sanction Israel, so we've also gotten companies to divest from Israel, to pull out their companies from inside of Israel, and they've moved elsewhere in response to us. The BDS movement has been very successful. It's been outlawed in the UK. It's been outlawed in the United States of America, where we say, fuck them. We're still doing it. And that's civil disobedience, which is another topic for another day. Someday I'll talk in detail about civil disobedience, what's its purpose, what's its intent, and how the people take back power from governments by implementing civil disobedience, so that good law could be brought to the forefront. We'll talk about that some other time. But I am Christ, I am disciple. This was a Christ, I am disciple stream. This was not a what you need stream. If it so happens I'm on what you need. And I'll have to send a link to some other people if that's the case, so they'll know this is a Christ I am disciple stream. Shout out to all the people who participated. Some of you guys try to push back on me, but I'm so based in the truth. It doesn't really matter what you say. I'm giving gems. I know I'm dropping gems on some of y'all, because some of y'all don't know what your powers and your abilities and your rights are. So y'all gonna suffer. Now, with respect to the stream, you can donate via PayPal. PayPal is, of course, a company used to be owned by Bezos. Bezos is one of the owners. Bezos is another guy he's with the military industrial complex. And this guy, you've heard of Blackwater and all that kind of stuff, and we'll talk about that some other time. I was just trying to keep it general. I don't want to go into specifics too much of what you could do. Remember, you always have the power. They don't have the power like you do. Collectively and even individually, you can start some stuff. So bear that in mind. I'm gonna catch you guys later. I am Christ, I am disciple on What You Need channel, I believe. That's why I saw that. You guys have a good one. Hope you enjoy your day. God be with you. Always, first and foremost, the Most High comes first. You know what I'm saying? Peace.